Hello, 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 ladies and
We're live.
gentlemen. My name is Joe Worley, still. I'm here with some pretty wonderful people, and we're here for a discussion on mental health for authors, how to stay in a good place, things that have triggered a difficult time, helping others out in the dark times. We're here to be friends and share, and talk about our issues with our mothers. Um, can we go around in a circle here and introduce ourselves? How about you, JJ? You want to start us out?
Yeah, thank you. I'm JJ Ackernect, or just Justin is fine as well. And I write the Homicidal Aliens Are Invading, and all I got is the Stat Menu series, which is the title's too long. I know.
It's great.
What quick question. What grade were you in when you learned how to spell your name?
Uh, First grade, I think. It was just kind of like I got the first few letters right and then just winged it. So it's a bit like Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness, where it's just like A C.
Good enough
And
for
then
me.
you get who it is. I'm the only kid in
Right.
kindergarten that can't spell his name.
All right. And we've got an up and comer here, Dakota Croot.
Yeah, Hi guys. I'm fairly new to the genre. I've only been here 8 years. And yeah, I am here. I'm writing books, love and life. I'm in currently. I'm in a 6-month release cycle, so I have. Let me rephrase that. I have 6 months where I'm putting a book out each month. So it started this month, and then I think it's either next week or the following week is the second book in that, and then one a month through March. So come check me out. It's the book 9, 10, and 11 in Completions Chronicles, followed by a new completed trilogy called Cooking with Disaster. Super fun.
Nice.
Nice.
Now, my initial question for you is I heard that your fingers were literally half an inch longer than they were before you started writing. Is that true? That your fingers have been worn down and they're smaller now?
Actually, see this bad boy right here. I've just got my voice is nice and soft and sultry now because I do a lot of dictation.
Really?
Oh,
That's really interesting. I love that.
yeah, part of my
All
mental
right.
health. Yeah.
All right. How about you? Yeah, I bet. How about you, Kaylin?
Hi, I'm Kalen Wilkinson. I write the Elementalist series and the Forging Valorant series. And actually, I have a new series, the first book of which comes up on pre-order hopefully today at some point, about the Krampus. It's a holiday-themed series. There's going to be a Christmas one, Valentine's one, St. Patrick's Day one, and then Independence Day one.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Do you use your voice to write too, or do you write like a real writer?
I don't know. I use my iPad.
I mean, you guys. So I got all the way down into I had a goal that I wanted to write 3,000 words for 4 days in a row, and on the last day I was just dying. I don't remember what it was, but I had to write. I mean, it was like 900 words on my phone. I almost stopped writing completely. I don't know how you guys do it.
Oh my gosh.
All right, Gary, how about you?
Not on our
Let's hear
phones,
that beautiful voice.
Hi, I'm Gary. I write nothing. I'm a narrator. So I talk a lot. I narrate some stuff with Sound Booth, some stuff with Kenny King, Simon Archer in the lit RPG kind of area.
Nice.
And yeah, just a narrator sitting in a box all day long.
All right,
Good that I'm here.
And my initial question for you is actually a serious one because I'm a aspiring narrator myself. What
Sweet.
got you started?
Oh man, not a good reason. Like I was a teacher in Japan. I used to teach English as a second language, and I hated it. I couldn't stand it. So I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? Why don't you try something? And I was like trying to get fit at the time. I failed,
Mhm.
but I was listening to audiobooks while running and thought
Yeah.
like, hey, I have a microphone and a voice. I maybe could try that. I loved
Yeah.
acting and all that kind of stuff. So I got in touch with some narrators and they put me in touch with some coaches and been doing it ever since. So very glad it
That's
worked out.
outstanding, man. All right, so we got a good group here, and you know we are going to touch on mental health, and I know Dakota talked about physical health a lot yesterday with a couple of other people, and so now we're sort of touching upon, and you said one of my favorite things in that one, which was the concept of mind, body, spirit, and I mentioned that in my last in my last one where there are no dump stats. You really do have to spread it out a little bit and find a happy medium. Healthy mind spaces. All right. So let's talk about healthy mind spaces. So for me and TJ, one of the first things I talked about is when I built my office, the number one thing I wanted to control over was the lighting, because I wanted to be able to change the little things, because I think it really makes a difference. So what are some of the things that you guys do? And if somebody wants to jump, that's great. Otherwise, I'll voluntold you. But if you guys want to share some of the things you do to start out to initiate your your rituals in order to start doing your work.
I can go.
All right.
I have stopped, and maybe this is like escapist. I don't know. I don't watch any news really at all, but especially not in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So like anything that where I'll try to watch things that just like either lift me up or I don't watch anything at all. But like stuff I can't control is not really going to be much use to me personally, but I will feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So I kind of like try to start off the day with like, let's at least feel baseline good and then go from there.
Nice. What about you, Kayla? What do you do? I mean, you seem pretty prolific. How long have you been writing?
2 years. I published my first.
Wow,
I started writing January of 2021, and then published my first book that August. So almost 3 years now, I guess.
that's beautiful. That's awesome. So what do you think is something that helps you get into a healthy mind space in order to do this? And do you feel, due to the fact that you've been cranking out books, do you feel like you have sort of painted yourself in a mental health corner at times?
Something that's kind of always just helps me like get into the mind space to write. Or with most things like in life is just to get my blood flowing. I usually like go for a run, and then I always do like jumping jacks before I write, because it just like I feel like it helps my as getting blood like flowing to my brain. It just helps my, I guess, creative juices flow. Is just to get my blood moving, and just because I'm gonna be sitting down for like a few hours to write, so it's always good just to like move around beforehand and just make sure that I'm like uplifted with what I'm about to do.
You know, you just said something that made me realize something. Every time that I've gotten on a kick and didn't want to go to bed, it's because I went to the gym that night. And I get and
Oh yeah.
seriously, it's for some reason it's the most obvious thing in the world what you just said, and it caused the biggest aha moment. Every single time that I get home at like 9 o'clock, I'm writing and writing, and I'm just killing it. That's really, thank you for saying that out loud, because it's one of those things that I think subconsciously I knew, but now that you've given it voice, it gives me an opportunity to say, hey, I can utilize that.
I'm exactly the same. I like just to echo what you said, Joe. Like middle of the day, I'll go for even just a walk, just to reset. And
Yeah.
moving around in some capacity always helps that.
What about you, JJ?
Um,
Do you comb your
I
beautiful beard?
I do. That doesn't have anything to do with writing. It's just necessity. Like, comb it, and there's anything living in there, building a nest, just get it out. But yeah, I do. I think Stephen King called it closing the door.
Yeah.
Like physically and metaphorically. Right now I'm sitting in my office, which is really just a renovated closet, and thankfully it has a physical door on it. But I will also, if I need to, I'll put on a white noise thing. I
Yeah.
have things that, if the like incense and scented candles to make it smell nice.
Mhm.
If there's, something outside that people burn
Speaking
wood
of
and
that,
shit around here.
I like
Um,
Lo-Fi Girl and candles.
she's perfect. She's
Yeah.
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Lo-Fi
She's
Girl
doing,
is killer, man.
yeah, she's got her Halloween theme up now. So
Yeah.
good for Lo-Fi Girl. She got me through a lot of stuff. Um, but yeah, and just making myself as comfortable as possible. If I'm having a bit of writer's block, I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where I can do what Kaylin suggested, which is just like get the blood moving. So I'll go out. I have a dog I can take for a walk. Lately, it's been a little bit rough. I got a puppy 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So I have a second dog,
Yeah.
and she's just got like two settings, which are just needle whirlwind and boneless sleep bag, and there's nothing in between.
Boneless sleep bag.
That
So
sounds familiar to me too.
so right
You'll
now
see that
she's
book out
boneless.
soon.
She's boneless sleep bag, so I can come here. But I know as soon as I get off and go check on her, she's going to turn into the needle whirlwind. But yeah, just shutting everything out as much as possible, physically and metaphorically, and kind of what Gary was saying about the news, like not trying to limit
Oh
my
yeah.
intake of that, because
Yeah.
that can be a lot, obviously. But yeah.
I want to ask Dakota as well, because we do have a great question by Kyle Wilkinson that I want to touch on.
Cool. So I don't know, man. I have spent a ton of time getting all of this stuff in order, right?
Yeah.
Like I do like most of the stuff that I do very intentionally, right? And so yeah, I mean, right now I write 5 hours a day, Monday through Thursday. I take Friday, Saturday, Sunday completely off. Um, and then from 3 until the time I have my kids at 5, I work on administrative stuff for my company or whatever else I need to be doing admin time. Um, After the kids are asleep, spend time with my wife, and then but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, man. Like right now, I spend time with my 1 year old. Saturday, Sunday with my whole family, and that's the thing, man. So for me, it is kind of remembering why I got into writing, why I started this as a career, and I got into this because not because I wanted to do this all the time, like forever. It's because I wanted to have the time to be with my family, to spend time with my community, to work on my health,
Yeah.
and just the knowledge that I can do that. I can just drop everything that I'm doing and go do one of those other things is a big mental health boost to me. So, other than that, yeah, I set up my office like this. It's pretty cool. It's got, I mean, everything is voice controlled, which is fun. It's all exactly to my taste. There's room for other people to come and work with me, and people
Yeah.
do, which is super nice. So yeah, man, I've just made a very creative, inviting space where I intentionally want people to come and work with me and get creative juices flowing, man. So
I love that. And I think that it's important to realize that healthy habits have created an ease of transition for you. Um,
exactly.
and the difference between, motivation, that fickle mistress, and discipline. Kyle says, when writing a death scene of a beloved character, does that affect your mental health? And if so, what are some things you've done to help yourself get out of that bad space in order to move forward and push through the difficulties of losing something you've put so much time into? And what kind of balance do you, well, we'll start with that, but also what kind of balance do you make to prepare your headspace for that kind of situation? So let's, actually, I kind of want to start with Gary here. And the reason why is because I think that sometimes, especially as a narrator, you don't know these things are happening until they happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when
So
you've voiced a character and you've built up these physical things that you do to help channel that character, like what happens when you set that person to rest?
yeah, I mean, so I can't speak to having created a character in my head
Mhm.
and written it down and done that, but definitely to like having experienced a character for X amount of time and then for that character to pass, it can be like it can be, be very emotional. So I suppose what I try to do is if you feel emotional in the performance, in the writing of it or whatever, I'll speak just from a narrator's point of view because I really can't speak from an author's point of view. When I'm in the booth and I'm performing, I'm going to let whatever come out however it wants to come out because
Yeah.
that will probably make the performance better. But if it's particularly strong, particularly difficult to go through, once I'm done, I'm out of the booth for a while just to be like, okay, I'm out of that headspace now. I'm
Yeah.
not in the sad place anymore. Still, probably you're not going to be like, I'm out of the booth. I'm
Yeah.
happy now. But like, you can at least be like,
Where's the ice
okay,
cream truck?
yeah, you can at least go out and be like, you know what? Eff it. I'm getting ice cream because
Yeah.
that was amazing, but it sucked at the same time. But
Yeah.
also, like, so you're like conflicted as all hell. So you just like divorce yourself from that thing that was just happening there,
Mhm.
go do something else, be in another headspace, and then come back to it when you feel ready. Is what I personally do.
All right. Does anybody else got something on this they want to touch on? I mean, it's a great
Yeah,
question.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it is. There's a lot of that goes into that. Especially, I feel like it depends. It very much so depends, like how much effort you have put into the character and how much of yourself has gone into that character.
Yeah.
There's a book called The First Skywalker, which I wrote back this winter, and then that came out this last August. But there's a character. I guess this is spoilers for it, but there's a character in it who is very much so built up as the main character's best friend throughout the first half of the book, and they've got a very close friendship relationship because they're both at this academy. They're both away from their home, um, and a lot of stuff's different, but they've got their friendship, and so it's very I feel like you can channel a lot of that into the character's reaction, where his best friend has passed, and it's about how he acts moving forward. It's the way I wrote it is there's some detachment for a bit of just like going through the motions of
Yeah.
what's happening and dealing with this, and then comes that emotion that comes in because you've had this detachment of just moving on, and then the emotion comes in of just this is what happened, this has changed me, and this is me moving forward. My my personality changed and altered based on what has happened.
You know, when you write characters, and you mentioned the term putting yourself, how much of yourself you put into a character. A lot of what I've noticed that what I write and what other people have written have elements of very familiar people in their lives, and sometimes, it's for instance, my character has a prosthetic below knee, but I didn't do that because I wanted to identify with the character. He's actually much more a friend of mine mindset wise than he is me. What I wanted was the trial of being on a desert planet with a prosthetic leg, because that sucks. And so,
Same
and because
everywhere.
I have personal experience with that, I wanted to give him that challenge, because I thought, what I want someone to read that and go, I never thought of that. That would really be a nightmare for someone who's, has to take care of skin. Your main character shouldn't have to be dealing with like skincare, but obviously that's a thing. So I think that it's a neat little sort of side thing. But so you do put pieces of yourself in things. And so when they do pass, it can be a heavy thing.
And you can talk about that to someone. I think, like, talk if you felt really terrible about something, or like just it made you feel a certain way in an intense way. If there's someone who feel comfortable talking to about and they're happy to hear it, you may as well just talk about it, because there's no harm, and there shouldn't be
Yeah.
any shame in like, oh, I felt sad. It's like, oh, you suck because you felt sad. Huh? Like, that's not the way it is.
No, I think that's the dream though. You
Yeah.
want people to be able to feel what you're feeling, um and that's why I think it's such a weird, like, from a narrator standpoint, those cold reads are the rawest. But sometimes they don't
Ooh.
always have the quality you want, but sometimes you just nail the feeling of what you want to get across there so much that it's hard not to be like, that's it. Like, that's the whole, like, kit and caboodle
Yeah.
right there. But you see, but then the more you listen to it, you're like, I slurred a word. There's a popping sound right there. I think I hear my daughter's hair dryer. Like, you start picking it apart. But that first read, sometimes you're just like, oh man, I killed that.
The worst thing is when you get a correction back and it's like, that was in the middle of when I was crying my eyes out, and you want me to get back there now? I can't do it. Just keep
Yeah.
the mistake in, please.
I'm
Performance is
gonna
better.
need to redo the entire chapter because I can't. I got to work myself back up into it.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here. Does anybody else have anything they want to add with that? I know, I know Dakota's had this experience himself.
Yeah. So yeah, man, with, I don't know, with characters that I'm killing off, no, not so much. It doesn't, it's not the same thing for me. I don't really empathize with my characters, right? I don't put myself in their place of pain, right? So it's like, this is all cool to me, or it all has a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's kind of I can see the grand design, so it's kind of cool to be there on the outside looking in. I will, however, go the opposite direction of that, and there are quite a few people in my books that died in real life. That then their families asked me to put them into my books because either they were really good friends of mine, or they were really big fans of mine, and so their family wanted to do something for them. And so that is always something when I really think back on it and look at those, and I say, man, miss that dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then you tend to treat that character a little nicer than your other characters. Just
Yeah.
throwing that out there. But yeah, there's definitely been points where it's like, hey, I've known people that like died in real life. Literally, like one night hanging out with my buddy. The next night, his brother was calling me that he died, right? And that he actually became the main character of Completionist Chronicles. That's Joe, right?
Oh
And
wow.
so yeah, and so like that's a whole thing. So it's always surprising to me how people want to see their deceased loved ones in those stories, because I would never put that in there unless their family
Yeah.
asked me to do that, right? And then just have a way to remember their kid and see them going on, trying and doing new things, So
And so I touched on this myself in another panel, and I wanted to ask you guys' opinions on this. Have you ever had a scene get away from you, and you end up doing some things with a character that made you go back into your outline for a few minutes and shift some stuff around? And the reason why I ask is because I had a side character that I wrote that I fully intended on utilizing at some point later, that in a moment it just felt right to end them. And so I'm curious if, are all your deaths planned, or do sometimes death and dismemberment, just like in real life, sneak up on you in ways that you didn't expect?
sneak up for sure.
Yeah.
I never plan for my characters to die off, right? Okay, let me rephrase it. There is one character that I have killed off intentionally, but it's just a dog, like a soft, fluffy, cuddly animal, So, you know,
That's beautiful.
I'm joking.
If there's a fluffy animal in this new book that you're writing, I'm not gonna allow myself to get attached to that character.
Well, but just watch out for those animal companions.
Yeah. What about you, JJ? Does your writing? I don't know. Are you a pantser or a plotter? Are you someone that that basically knows what you're getting into as you're writing, or does it sometimes just slip out of your hands, like the Never-Ending Story? Such big strong hands, but the
Um,
nothing.
No, I'm definitely not a planner. Planning's never worked out for me. Every time I
Yeah,
try to plan, I get up to like chapter 3 or whatever, and then I'm off in the weeds somewhere.
you
So
plot off.
I've just stopped trying to fight it. My most organized, I'm probably a hybrid. So there might be like, I'm writing a series of 6 books right now. I have a few dozen characters at the very least. I have planned 2 deaths so far, and that's it.
Yeah,
Everything else is up for grabs. Um, I think if you really hardline plan stuff like a death, then it loses some of the unpredictability, or it stops feeling like a real threat. Like if you telegraph too much, like, okay, this character is going to die, so I need to set that up,
yeah,
then it's not really a surprise. Maybe it loses some impact. It depends on how you write it, obviously. But in my case, I feel like if I plan too much, then I wind up making it feel artificial or forced or whatever. Um,
Mm.
so yeah, I've definitely, been writing a character, and halfway through a book, I'm like, oh, they're going to be dead soon.
oh yeah.
Like it won't be in the moment, but I'll figure out here, like, okay, based on everything that's come before, no, they're definitely dead. They're dead by the end of this book, 100%. I'll be like, darn. Oh well, I hope it makes somebody sad and they feel something
Yeah.
anyway. And next chapter, but yeah.
And that being the goal, obviously, you want a good movie doesn't necessarily end the way you want it to. I'll use the movie Memento as an example. I don't think anyone knew what you were getting into when you started watching the movie, but I don't think anyone was able to step away from that movie and not be like, what in the crap did I just watch, and not think about it for 2 or 3 days. And so whether or not you like the movie is irrelevant. You felt something, and there's not much art that really does that on a level. And I think that you guys obviously are capable of that, or you wouldn't still be doing it. So, let's see here, and we've got Sean here. What's a time that you've had a character die which you didn't expect to die, and how did you deal with it? It's similar to what we asked, but if you wanted to give a specific example of that without necessarily spoiling, um, or you can spoil. It's your fans. Does anybody want to speak on that?
I had a character where I didn't not that I didn't expect him to die, I'd kind of planned for him to die. But actually, I did write his death, and then I thought afterwards, I kind of took a few days off from writing, and I was thinking about like the second half of this book, and I thought, but if he didn't die, then I could have all these character interactions, which could bring up this whole new plot line, which would just like add another element to this book. So then I actually went back and changed it so that he didn't die. But just because I had planned for him to die, I had written his death, but then I thought, but I could do all this other stuff if he didn't die. So I went
You gave
back
him
and
the misery treatment.
yeah, yeah.
That's I'm sorry. That's if you haven't read Misery or even seen the movie by Stephen King. The general synopsis of that is there's a writer who is tired of writing the series and finishes off his character, gets into a bad car accident in the snow and gets kidnapped by this lady by the name of Annie, played by Kathy Bates. Oh my lord!
Talk about
Um,
super fan.
Yeah, and she basically makes sure that he can't go anywhere while he rewrites her back alive, and will not allow him to heal through various utilization of hammers and axes, depending on what medium you're interacting with Stephen King with. Having said
Mhm.
that, I think that that's hopefully you have fans that are that
Passionate.
excited for your and passionate for your work that never get the opportunity to entrap you. I love the passion, Annie. I love where your head's at. So, one thing that I wanted to ask as well is the five senses. Do you feel like you're because sometimes you write a whole scene and you're like, this just feels hollow and I cannot figure out exactly what it is. And usually it's because you've left out two senses that really needed to be there, whether it's smell or sound or something. So do you have a rule that you go back through and go, hey, these scenes feel empty? Or do have you gotten to a point now where you're like, I need at least four in most scenes unless I'm just walking? Do you have a rule for that, or is it just something that you sort of subconsciously do at this point?
I don't have a rule for it. Whatever
Mhm.
fits the scene.
Yeah.
Like if it's like if you're down by the pier, I'm 100% going to include smell.
Hmm.
That is just a place where like there's the ocean, there's fish, there's probably like diesel fumes from boats. You would be remiss to not include smell in that kind of setting.
Yeah.
If you're just like walking into a typical place, whatever, somebody's house that's moderately clean but doesn't have a significant odor to it, then probably not smell. But yeah, whatever seems most appropriate.
I like the idea. I've never done that. Like I've never forced a sensory experience of it. Usually I'm being pretty descriptive already. Like, so I've never really, I would have to say that it's more subconscious then in kind of what you're saying. Like I'll describe what's going on. But usually it's like sensations from, sensations that you can relate to or have experienced or fun things like that.
Do you ever
So
go
yeah.
into a scene with a particular sense? Like sometimes it's visceral. You want something to be
Mm,
visceral. But have you
right.
ever went to a scene with a sound or a smell in mind that you just wanted to really nail somebody with?
Hmm. No. That's interesting though. But
The reason why I say that is because I feel like smell can bring you back to a moment better than
Mhm.
anything. For me, it is the smell of DEET and off spray. Nothing gives me no nothing puts me closer to a flash, even loud sounds. Nothing puts me closer to like a, Charlie Everywhere moment than the smell of off spray. And it's the worst. So if I'm going to write that into my book, so hopefully I can trigger somebody, and because it
That's my
definitely
goal.
would
That was
trigger
my
me
goal.
just writing it.
I quite enjoy as well playing on how how they've got their senses, but more so how what's happening affects their emotional state in the moment with their senses. As an example, I've had a character before where he's just laying under all of these bodies, all of these corpses. He's suffocating and he has to like crawl. And you've got like the smell of you've got the corpses, but then there's the
Yeah.
relief is he pulls himself away from them and then he's like free from them. And another thing kind of similar with that is I play a lot on tiredness, or how tired someone might feel in the moment, or how tired someone might feel after a certain, like if you lunge forward, or if you're in a sword fight for even just a few seconds, you can begin to feel tired, especially depending on how adrenaline's working with the specific actions you're taking. Is you can get tired really fast, like even if it's just like
Yeah.
a minute of combat or a minute of doing something physical, it can really tire you out, and that can affect you in different ways, especially like senses and what's happening with the perspective, whether first person, third person thoughts, and so on.
I think that's really interesting because a lot of times you want to give your readers opportunities to relate to your characters. So when you do simple things like his legs burned as he ran up the dune, I mean, things like that can really can give somebody a moment. And you might be like Dakota, and these things you write these moments in, and you don't realize. A lot of times, especially people that rely on puns a lot. I have said things and then laughed at myself because even I didn't expect it. And it sounds like I'm being silly here, but sometimes when you do a lot of situational humor, you work on a subconscious level sometimes, and sometimes you just say and do things that really trigger your own funny bone. And it sounds awful. One of my favorites is I was with a coworker, and it was really a mix of exhaustion. Like, we were like day 5 of a convention, and just silliness. And somebody walked by in Crocs, and he said, "I hate those things. They hurt my feet." And I said, "So I guess you would say," and I couldn't even get it out. I said, "They're your arch nemesis." And it was just
I love it.
I mean, it's exactly. I knew you would
Very
like
good.
that, but like it's so good that I wish someone else had said it so I could tell everybody about how funny it was without sounding like I'm patting myself on the back. But honestly, it was timing sometimes nails it too, and it was just
Uh,
really a well done joke on my part, if I do say so myself, and I do.
and it's awesome. I'm with you. I agree. Fully agree. Already thinking of how I can work that in.
You can have it, man. And Kyle, I don't believe I am in your head, but I think that if we've lived similar lives, then I think that we might have been in the same vat. So, what's your go-to storybook? Otherwise, that helps you get back to a more centered place. That's an interesting question. I think it's a little general because I think it's different for everyone. But if somebody has a comment here they want to make, I think it's definitely a valid question.
I watch a lot of comedy. If I'm feeling like in
Mm.
any way bad at all, I'll watch like right now I'm just watching a lot of Taylor Tomlinson. I think she's so
Oh
funny.
yeah,
So like I'll just watch her
she's
special on
not
Netflix.
bad looking either.
But yeah, I mean that or yeah, I watch a lot of comedy. This is like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm feeling bad
it's
or
like a
feeling
palate
tired.
cleanser for you.
Yeah, it's just like I love comedy. I'll watch any of it. So
Yeah,
this is just a good to get back to like standard basic baseline.
yeah.
I'm the opposite. I watch horror a lot. That's like my
Ooh.
comfort genre.
Hmm.
So if it's a book, it's The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker. They turned that
Oh my
into Hell the
God.
Hellraiser movies. It's like if it's an audiobook, it's 3 hours long. You can listen to it in a short afternoon. It's great. I'm just like, oh. And for movies, it's Noroi the Curse, which is a Japanese found footage
Nice.
movie. Really, really just awful stuff. A whole
Yeah,
lot of content warnings for it, but it's just like, I don't know. I'm sure, like, we're talking about healthy mind space. I'm sure that's a red flag, but it's just like a blanket, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's so familiar. This is like, oh, they're at the part with all the dead whatevers,
yeah.
and I'm just like, yeah, it's nice. Resident Evil 2 was my
So
comfort video
good.
game back in '98, the original one on PlayStation. The remake's great too, though, but same idea.
And as far as like headspace wise, it's interesting because I tend to lean into what I'm feeling kind of in the same way you do. If I'm feeling sad, I'm going to listen to sad music, and it's almost like a ripping the band-aid off my and for me, I really can sort of flush some of those feelings and negativity out by doing that. But I'll be honest with you, I did go the other direction when I got back from Iraq. The first thing I did was read Harry Potter. I wanted, and it really, you could have just inserted any school um like story, a young adult series in a school, and I would have been. I could have even went back and what's the old Dragonlance, the wizard. He was a thief, and then he was in
Graceland.
school. No, not the other one, the older one. It might have been Forgotten Realms. He was their Gandalf, kind of. Somebody in chat may know. But he had a whole book, and nobody liked it but me. But he was in a school. I mean, for some reason, for me, that what really helped me. I needed something, I think, that didn't require me to read into subtext. Elminster. Thank you, Jay. Yeah, Elminster. So and so for me, yeah, absolutely. As far as like narrating on that side of things, Gary, do you get warnings from your authors like, hey, you're about to be reading this or that? What is you know, do you ever feel like you're more vulnerable than you'd like to be while reading a certain type of scene or a certain type of book, but you've got time slots, you have work that you have to do, and you don't
Yeah.
always get to choose?
There may have been a time when I would like not let myself feel a certain way,
Yeah.
but like just it gets to a point where you're just like, why you to run away from a feeling is kind of like it's still gonna be there. So you can all like just asking yourself, how do I feel? Why do I
Yeah.
feel that way? Am I really feeling this way? Let's delve down deeper. Um I don't mind feeling vulnerable, I think, to answer your question. So it doesn't bother me if I do feel that way. And it can always just like I don't have to like reflect on it and be like, oh, you're bad because you felt that way. Which I probably used to do when I was younger and stupider.
You know, as you get, I guess more mentally comfortable with yourself and healthier, I feel like you can handle things much more calmly. For instance, I feel like when I was 20, if somebody, I mean, I grew up with, red hair back when I had hair. And people, would make fun of me for it or whatever. And every once in a while, somebody just pushed me too far and I'd end up hitting them in the face. As an adult, and especially with the experiences I've had, and I don't know exactly what it is that made me this way, but most people just don't have the power to hurt me. I mean, I don't feel like they come from a place that can really understand my life. And it's almost like somebody saying something about your mother when you're 12 versus somebody saying something about your mother now. You're like, that's just ridiculous. Like, who does that? I mean, unless you're playing Call of Duty on Xbox, like what, like
It's almost
where are
like a
you?
reference.
Yeah, it is. You actually have to take a class. So PowerPoint. Yeah, Elminster. That I like how that was a question and an answer at once. Have you ever had to reject a book for being too grim or dark?
Oh
Only
yeah.
when it's gratuitous. For me,
Okay.
anything when I read something and it's like, okay, now, like like for instance, as far as grim and dark, it doesn't get much grimmer or darker without going into like the dredges than Joe Abercrombie. But at no point do you ever feel like the blade itself, or you never feel like Logan Nine Fingers is gratuitous. It feels very natural to the world and to itself. So what about you guys? Or I imagine that's you, Gary, specifically that she's asking.
Yeah, professionally, no. I don't unless it was just like gratuitous. But then I wouldn't. I would just be like, oh, this is just I don't like the material, not like I'm offended by it. So professionally, no. If I was reading it for pleasure, if I wasn't in a good headspace, maybe I wouldn't read it. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't come back to it. So no, not really. I
I
don't
have.
think so.
Throw that out. So as a publisher, right?
To Mountaindale? Okay, yeah, that was my question.
Right. So as a publisher, man, it's always interesting to have such a massive dichotomy between what people say they're going to be handing you and what they actually hand you. And like one of the first things that we do when someone is like, "Hey, we want to publish with you," is we look at their outline, right? And so we're like, "Okay, so show us your outline." Sorry for the pants. Oh, hello, hello.
He's either really
there?
playing a hilarious
Did I
trick on
freeze?
us by
Felt like I
freezing.
froze
Yeah,
there.
you're frozen.
Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyone? No.
You look
Okay.
great, but you're frozen.
Oh,
There you
you're
are.
back. You're back.
Can you hear me?
We
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now we can see
Can
you
you hear me?
moving a little as well. Yep.
We're doing the Zoom seance. Can you hear me?
I'm frozen. Am I okay?
This
though?
is like a
Okay,
weird,
whatever.
delay.
Well, so I once had. Hi. Yeah, great. All right, cool. So I once had. Man, great. Sounds good. Guys. Oh no. So I'm just gonna talk and hope you guys get this.
All right.
Oh man. Just gonna talk and hope you get this. Yeah, my
Oh, you're frozen again.
Do you want to try backing out and jumping back in? Yeah, I think that he's
All right.
gonna.
While he does that, I guess I'll jump in. So I don't always believe that inclusion equals endorsement. So like if someone like Joe Abercrombie includes some really heinous shit in his books, I don't automatically think that that's a terrible book or Joe Abercrombie is a terrible person. I look more at how something horrible in a story is framed. So if a horrible thing happens in a story and the overall story is framing it as horrible, then we're good. Like that makes sense to me. So if it's a story about war and horrible things happen in war, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think that's being honest with the reader and about the story. I think if something tries to kind of sanitize things too much, then I don't trust it. It's like, okay, well now you're obviously trying to clean this up because it maybe makes you uncomfortable, or you don't want to make your reader
You're hiding the
uncomfortable.
maggots under a sheet.
Exactly. And this is all about like healthy mind space. And if
Yeah.
I was reading about a character going through a dark time mentally, but it all seemed a little too clean, and I'm just like, well, like, okay, you're eating a sleeve of Oreos in bed at noon, and that's it. Like that's depression for you. I mean, like I've been there. Like, yeah, but to only like that's as deep as it goes, and it's like, okay, well, you either don't know what you're talking about, or you're intentionally being dishonest with the story and the reader by making this a little too neat and tidy. So as grim, as dark, whatever as it needs to be in the story, as long as it is framed honestly, then okay.
I think personally, obviously you have to read based off of how you're feeling sometimes, but sometimes things fall into your lap and you just can't put it down and you're just in the midst of it. I think what sets people, I saw a thing the other day about why, what's wrong with our collective generation. And they said that we all read a Stephen King book about 5 years too early. And I think that that's a fair assessment. For me, it was Dean Koontz. But I did immediately go right into Stephen King. But at no point did I feel like that affected my overall headspace. And like you said, that acceptance isn't endorsement. I think that works when you're like Netflix and the controversy with Dave Chappelle. If with comedy, of course it's supposed to trigger some people because it's comedy, but also when you're a publisher, when you're doing, you have a brand. You have sort of what people a sort of a range of what people expect from you, and if people are chucking babies into a volcano for funsies in like chapter 1 and it's only going to ramp up from there, maybe Mountaindale is not the right place for that type of book.
Honestly, man, it's not far off because I've had so my story. I'll make it very quick. One of the first things that we do as a company when someone wants to work with us is we look at their outlines, right?
Yeah.
And then we approve the outline, right? And so we give them a contract based on the outline. But if the work itself is substantially different than what the outline was, like we're talking, didn't even use that, hands us something completely different, well, then that contract is obviously dead, right? And it has happened a surprisingly massive number of times where someone will say they're going to write this book and they hand you something different. And and it's always quite shocking to the system to be like, yo, you've seen how we operate, you've seen kind of you've seen our how our business model is, and kind of what our reputation for our types of books are. Why would you hand this to me? And so it's
Yeah.
always, there's always something going on. And honestly, mental health plays a huge role in it. They're like,
Yeah.
if they come in and they're like, well, when I handed you that outline, I was so excited. This is all passion for me. This was all excitement. And then I got working and I just went straight into depression. And I had to do this to, hopefully make rent and all this other stuff. And then their book just reflects their reality. And so that can be a really difficult thing for a lot of people.
I have not read Prince of Thorns, but I have heard about it,
Mm.
and it is on my auxiliary to be read. There's a certain level of dark that's okay, but not too dark. But you always have to consider the source, and I guess also you have a responsibility to your readers, and there is a balance to be had there to maintain or give foreshadowing for what's going to happen. For instance, I hate to circle back around, 'cause not that Harry Potter is like a pinnacle of or anything, but one thing that I really like is that book 1 was written for the same people that book 7 was written for. And I find that really interesting, because if you were to read book 1 and then read book 7, you would be like, what in the crap happened here? Because not only did the stakes jump, the consequences jumped, and they were real. Book 1 is feel good, fun, young adult. I'd let my 11-year-old read it. Book 7, I'd prefer him wait to read that, not because he's not old enough to understand it, but because I think that there is a certain mental headspace that you need to be in to enjoy. I'm not going to let my 11-year-old boy watch Blazing Saddles because he doesn't understand the social distinction and why it's funny. And that what makes that movie funny is that it's actually making fun of the people that are offended by it, in a weird sort of way. And so, as a writer, you have, I don't want to say responsibility. That's a strong word, because these are your fans. They're there by choice. They're paying.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want to, have Jax's hands eat his own face. And yeah, you don't want to go full kaiju battlefield surgeon on your own characters without any sort of foreshadowing. So and by the way, hey Michael, it's good to see you in here, and Mr. Glasscock here. So Sharon says, what do you recommend for authors going through burnout or other mental difficulties?
I have a great answer for this.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Okay. So, all right. Bear with me for a second. Who here has gone? That's right. Thank you. You're the first person to do it with me. All right. So
I'm so slow. Oh man.
all right. So who here has gone through burnout? Like, who here has dealt with burnout?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So my recommendation is just to push past it, work as hard as you can, sit down and just no, of course not. Right? Like even hearing that out loud, everyone was like, no.
I was already typing.
Because
suck it up.
No, man, the reality is the only way to come out of burnout is to give yourself some time. You had to get some distance from what we were doing. Find things that are small that you can do and you can complete 100%, because I mean you're literally burning through all of your dopamine, man. Like you don't have a complete project. You're sitting there staring at a screen, whatever it is. And you need to find things that you can do and complete and succeed at. Right. And, everything from just getting up and doing some exercise in the morning, making a nice breakfast, make your bed, little things, man, little things that you just complete, and just take some time off of writing, do other things, market your books. Because typically if you're in burnout, you have other books out, right? It's not like, man, I'm a chapter into my first book. I'm burnt, done, quit my job for this. And you're probably not at that point. Burnout is usually pretty neck deep into your career here. And so take time, find successful things that you can do and give yourself time, because that's really all you can do. You need to refill the well.
Yeah.
If you have a hydraulic press at the bottom of the well squeezing every last drop out, then stepping away isn't enough to refill the well. It's
Yeah.
just enough to take the pressure off and let water come in. You need to do creative things. You need to do things that let you succeed and have those little dopamine hits and come back eventually, or you won't.
It's funny. TJ and I just did a whole thing on this, and one of the things, everything that you mentioned, on top of that is that force planned recreation, touch grass, don't set yourself up for failure is the big thing. Make backups of your work so that you don't have an excuse to make things. Everybody knows
Mhm.
somebody who's lost a book or a significant portion of one, and
Mhm.
it can end a career. You
It
can
really can.
absolutely end a career. And so but absolutely, I love what you're saying there, because that's that physical thing of being able to do something physically, like Kaylin mentioned earlier, is amazing. It's such a
Yep.
hack. And when you're training animals, and I mentioned this as well, but when you're training animals and they're confused by something, you circle back around to sit. You circle back
Mhm.
around in easy things. One of the things that Brian told me to do that's really helped me to see progress is to break my chapters up into their own document before I add them to the master, so that I have a whole document. Like, that's a chapter. I just did a whole chapter.
Mhm.
And it's a little thing. It's 3,000 words. It's a day's work, but it's not, or a third of a day's work if you're Dakota talking into his microphone with his sweet voice, with his pretty privilege.
A pretty privilege. That's right. If anyone missed that, that was from the previous panel. Someone
Yeah,
said I had pretty privilege, and I said all I'm taking away from this is you think I'm pretty. So I
yeah,
was pretty
that
happy
was
about
me too, by the way.
that. Oh,
i'm
was you?
i'm on
Oh, it
i'm
was
on
you.
fire, baby.
All right,
So hard
man.
when you have very little relaxation. Okay, Sean, and Dakota just mentioned this as well, and you've lost control. You've lost control. You can do anything that you prioritize.
Mhm.
And I don't mean anything like learn to fly a plane. I mean anything as in breaking your things together. You're going to find a way to get to the grocery store. Your mental health is just as important as these things. And if you're not going to the mental health grocery store to get yourself some spinach you want to eat, then what are you doing with your time, man?
And that affects your writing as well, because like if you
Absolutely.
have to if you're writing a book, and especially as you can even as a reader tell, you have to enjoy what you're writing. You have to be immersed in these characters and in their actions. And if you're enjoying it and you're happy to be sitting down and writing right now, you've got the right mood set and you're writing and you really enjoy it and you really flesh out what's happening, then it
Yeah,
translates to a great book versus if you spend an hour where you're dejected, you're tired, and then it's not the best time to write and you write that same amount, it's not going to be as engaging. It's not going to be as interesting. And when you go back to edit or reread, I can think, oh, wow, this section's pretty awesome. Oh, everyone's really showing their emotions. You can really tell who these characters are and what's happening. Versus this chapter is just like, oh, it doesn't have the same life because the book has to have the life, it has to have the energy to really add to the suspense and suck the reader in. So it really does. It's better sometimes to just not even write if you're feeling that way, to just go for a
yeah.
run or go do something to pick yourself back up and put yourself back in the right mindset to be able to write that good chapter.
Yeah, or maybe short note a couple of things and just step away from it after you put down your initial ideas on it, just so you feel like, hey, I did make some thought process progress towards this, but I do need to step away. So we're at a
Mhm.
5-minute warning, but we do have a really good point that Sharon is making, where it says, I've seen readers make comments about what authors take personal time off that I found rather disturbing. I want to say this. My daughter started a job, and the first
Mm.
thing I told her, she's 16, I said, somebody will walk in there and absolutely lose their crap over the smallest thing. Think about what it would take you as a normal, rational person to walk into a place and scream at a 16-year-old girl. These people are not well. Thank you for your money. Thanks for buying my book, but you need help. If you are going to not allow an author to have a week off to spend with his family without making progress, then you really need to reassess what you're asking for other people, and you're probably pushing everyone in your life away from you. But thank you for your money. But I say that because Yeah, I should be writing itis, and I would love to go around with that, but that's a whole. I feel like that would start a huge conversation that we don't have time for.
Hmm.
So what I want to do is give everybody an opportunity to plug what they're working on right now, what they're most excited about, and Dakota can tell you about Duceps.
Duceps.
Duceps. All right.
You
Do you
want me
want
to
to
start?
start it off? Yeah, you go ahead there,
Yeah, sure.
Dakota.
So yeah, like I mentioned at the start of this right now, I'm currently I'm actually, first off, I'm taking, just as part of this, I haven't written anything at all in October.
The world still
Here.
turns.
Oh,
Now he's not even
and I'm
talking.
froze.
No.
We broke Dakota again. He got everything in that basement except for internet.
I'm not in the basement actually. So now
Wow.
like, I'm like upper floor now, man. I've got light. It's great. No, everything
Moving
but
on
internet.
up.
That's funny. I want a basement though. That'd be great. No, so I actually have taken this month off. All I'm doing this month is making some outlines, doing some like business stuff, but all things that I can complete and be done. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm
Mental health.
So, yeah, and I've written 8 books this year, and I have 5 more months of books releasing before I don't have a month where I'm putting a book out, and so I have 6 months where I could literally do nothing else, and I'm still being able to provide for the next 6 months, which is super cool. But
Yeah.
currently, it's book 8 in the completionist. I'm sorry, book 9 in completionist chronicles came out this month, which was Tenacity. Book 10 is coming out in about a week or two, which is Thessarize. And then book 3, book 11, but the third book in that series is Thunderplump, and a spectacular end to that arc. It really. And then following January, February, and March is a new completed trilogy called Cooking with Disaster. And it's super fun, and it's brutal and hilarious, and I hope everyone loves
Nice.
it. And then after that, more books, man, because I have.
You're a machine. You're a
Well,
machine. I love it.
because I sat on them. I sat on
Yeah.
them for a year, man. Like I'm doing these books coming out in January with Audible. So Audible picked up that series. I handed them to them in January of this year. And so like I'm so far, I have such a backlog just catching up
Yeah.
that it is pretty extreme in giving me lots of time to get ahead of myself and my own mental hang-ups about working or not, so taking time is really cool right now. So
All right, Kaylin, what about you? What you working on?
So I'm about halfway through writing Forging Valorant's book 2. But in the meantime, for this Halloween slash Christmas, I've got the Krampus book 1 in my Krampus Chronicles new series,
Nice.
which should come out on pre-order tonight. It will release November 3rd with an audio release accompanying it, and it's like a horror series. It's going to be about the Krampus, lots of holiday themed adventures. Um, Book 1, the first one, his sleigh crashes by this town, snowstorms, cozy town, middle of winter. Krampus is coming to town, and it's pretty exciting.
It's
There's
a
very much
joyous time.
horror.
No.
Yeah, it's a very joyous time. I also have the audiobook for Forging Valorant's book 1. The audiobook for that comes out. It's been submitted to Audible last week, so I'm hoping it comes out
Who's
later this
voicing
week.
that?
Zach Federici, he's fantastic. He's got so many different accents he does for it. I can't wait. He's doing the Krampus book as well. I can't wait for the audiobook to come out because it's
God.
fantastic.
Have you heard Steve Campbell switch between his Irish and Scottish accent? I can't
I
tell
have
you
not. I
exactly
can
what he's
imagine,
doing,
though.
but I know when he switches. And he'll do it in the middle of a sentence. He makes me feel like I should just hang up my headphones and just stop. Guy's a beast. All right, what about you, Gary? What you working on right now?
Narrating a lot of audiobooks. Right now, I'm doing an Irish historical romance, so you're all gonna
cool.
you're all gonna buy that, right? For the main thing for like health and mental health, I think one last thing I would ever say is like if you want to see an immediate level up, just buy my supplement. No, don't do that. Just get as much sleep as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Prioritize sleep, and a lot of things will fall into place. Yeah, a lot of books, a lot of narration, which is good fun.
JJ, what you got going on, brother?
The finishing up the third book in my Homicidal Aliens Are Invading and All I Got Is the Stat Menu series.
I love
Should
that.
be out January. The audio for the second book just came out last month, which I'm extremely happy with. Stephanie Savannah is the narrator. And that's it. So thank you very much.
And on my end, I'm just Joe Worley. I'm, no big deal yet, but you just wait. I'm going to make it. I'm going to hit the big time. Now I'm working on some things myself, and hopefully I'll have some links for you guys soon. I got a website I'm working on and things like that. Doing some short narrations right now, and a bunch of stuff for a nonprofit, doing commercials and things like that. So, just doing work, pushing. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and being vulnerable and talking about an honestly a really serious issue that I think a lot of people don't want to acknowledge as a truth, and that's the fact that some of these heroes, these authors that we look up to, are humans, and they deal with very human problems. And in fact, with all this pressure and work comes with a lot of things to overcome. And so, I appreciate you guys being here and pushing and working. And Gary, I love your voice, man. I need to figure out some stuff that I may have even heard before. You're like Brian Norton, but better.
Better. All right, yeah.
I'll take it.
But I appreciate everybody being here. If anybody has anything else they want to add, I just wanted to close it up on my end by saying, mind, body, spirit, sleep, don't set yourself up for failure, eat, get the
Yeah.
blood flowing, and do small tasks to build yourself up. These things make a big difference in the long run.
Absolutely. Sweet, man. Hey, thanks for moderating, Joe.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. All right. And now we have to do a freeze. You guys ready?
I'm ready. All together. We'll not talk at all while she is closing down the
So
thing,
can I
right?
close it now? When?
Yeah,
Okay,
right now.
We
I
said
think
we
any
were-
time now you can do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.